Meet the Neanderthals, a long-lost species of human. Wait, what? Turns out that's not quite true. The Neanderthals are extinct, yes, but they were not a separate species. They were us. We are all technically Neanderthals. But who were they really? Hi, it's me, and this is our prehistoric documentary about the Neanderthals. Let's begin with the basics. Who were the Neanderthals? Where did they come from? When did they live? And why aren't they around today? These are the questions we'll answer in this video. Who were the Neanderthals? If you're watching this channel, chances are you already know a thing or two about Neanderthals. But for those of you just joining us, let's start with the basics. The Neanderthals were a group of archaic humans who lived across Ice Age. Europe from around 400,000 to 40,000 years ago. They used animal skins to fashion clothing and create shelter, built up hearths to keep warm, and hunted big game, including woolly mammoths, reindeer, and wild horses. In fact, they were so successful at hunting large Ice Age animals that some scientists think they may have driven many of these species to extinction. While average human height in Europe during the last Ice Age was somewhere between 4 feet 11 inches and 5 feet 3 inches, Neanderthals were stockier, with shorter limbs and a larger rib cage, which would have helped them conserve heat. Their brains were also bigger than ours. In fact, by studying their skulls, scientists discovered that Neanderthals had the largest brain capacity of any human species we've ever found. This includes Homo sapiens. Now, it's important to remember that we don't know exactly how the Neanderthals looked. The classic depiction of a Neanderthal is a stocky, short, brutish man with a huge brow ridge, a receding chin, and a protruding midface. But much of this is based on a single fossil find in the Neander Valley, Germany, hence the name Neanderthal. This is the only place where the Neanderthals get their name. The valley is home to the Neanderthal Museum, a shrine dedicated to the great lost race of humanity. But the truth is, these guys weren't that different from you or me. Other fossils suggest that they may have actually been taller and more muscular than modern humans. They were strong and athletic, perfectly suited to life in the Ice Age. We've known about Neanderthals since 1829 when the first fossils were discovered in the Neander Valley. Since then, scientists have identified hundreds of individuals from dozens of sites across Europe. What they've learned from studying these remains is that Neanderthals were not just apes-like hairy beasts that rampaged across Europe. They were highly intelligent, capable of complex thought and planning, capable of deep emotion and grief. They could speak and communicate in ways that we might not expect. And they made beautiful tools, weapons, and jewelry. They created art and perhaps even buried their dead. In other words, they were human. Some archaeologists believe that Neanderthals lived in small family groups led by an adult male and female, similar to our own hunter-gatherer societies. They traveled from place to place, following herds of reindeer and mammoths, living off the land and hunting big game. Foraging and hunting required cooperation and social skills, suggesting that they lived in small groups of around 25 to 50 people. As populations grew, they may have split into smaller bands or remained together in large extended families. One study published in the journal Nature in 2016 even suggested that Neanderthal males may have competed for breeding rights within their groups. If this is true, it would have been similar to the mating system found in chimpanzees today. None of this is particularly surprising, but it does help paint a picture of Neanderthals as more than just savage brutes. They were real people living real lives. And while they didn't leave behind any written records, the archaeological record suggests they were more like us than we might have once thought. They made spears and other weapons from stone and bone, crafted knives and scrapers from animal bones, and created jewelry and ornaments from shells and animal teeth. Some of these objects were so finely crafted they suggest the use of specialized tools and techniques. And some were so beautiful they must have been made by an artist with a creative vision. For example, a set of perforated deer antlers found in the Czech Republic may have been used as part of a ritualistic dance. Meanwhile, a necklace made from the teeth of foxes and wolves suggests a fascination with dangerous animals and perhaps even a belief in their power. In fact, there's evidence that Neanderthals may have believed that certain animals had special powers. For example, they sometimes buried their dead with the remains of large cats, suggesting a belief that these animals could help guide them in the afterlife. They also placed the remains of animals on top of their graves, suggesting a belief in the power of these creatures. So how smart were the Neanderthals? Very. Researchers analyzing their bones say they had the largest brain of any human relative, including us. Some researchers say they may have even been smarter than us because their brain was wired differently. It had more connections in the front, which is the area responsible for higher-level thinking and planning. Neanderthals were probably pretty emotional too. Take, for example, the case of a young girl who died after being hit on the head by a stone. Her injuries also caused her to lose part of her jaw. Analysis of her skeleton shows that she survived for several months with only half a lower jaw before dying of a lung infection. Throughout her ordeal, she suffered excruciating pain and likely experienced terrible swelling in her face. Despite this, her family cared for her until she passed away. Archaeologists were able to tell this because the bones around her neck show signs of where she was cradled by another person. They buried her with flowers, animal bones, and stone tools. This suggests that she wasn't just a member of their group. She was loved and remembered. When did Neanderthals go extinct? So if Neanderthals were so smart, sophisticated, and well adapted to their environment, why did they disappear? Scientists don't know for sure, but there are a few theories. One theory is that climate change played a role. The end of the Ice Age brought about a rapid warming of the planet, which may have caused the extinction of many large animals. And with their food supply disappearing, the Neanderthals may have been forced to flee Europe for more hospitable regions. Another theory is that competition with Homo sapiens played a role. Modern humans began to migrate into Europe around 45,000 years ago, and some scientists believe that they may have competed with Neanderthals for resources. This competition may have been fierce, but others argue that there is no evidence to support this theory. Instead, they point to the fact that Neanderthals and Homo sapiens share so much genetic material, suggesting that the two species may have interbred rather than fought each other. Perhaps the most popular theory is that Neanderthals disappeared because of their genes. According to this theory, Neanderthals interbred with modern humans, and over time, their genes were absorbed into the human gene pool. Today, all Nan-African humans carry between 1 and 4% Neanderthal DNA. This suggests that the two species lived side by side for thousands of years and regularly interbred. In fact, one study published in the journal Cell in 2010 suggested that Neanderthals and Homo sapiens interbred at least 500 times over a period of thousands of years. But what happened 40,000 years ago? Well, the answer may lie in our DNA. While most scientists agree that Neanderthals went extinct around 40,000 years ago, there's some debate over exactly what happened. One theory is that they were wiped out by a sudden catastrophic event, such as a volcanic eruption or an asteroid impact. But there's no evidence to support this idea. Others believe that Neanderthals simply blended in with modern humans. According to this theory, Neanderthals and Homo sapiens interbred over a long period of time. As a result, Neanderthal genes gradually disappeared into the human gene pool. Still, others believe that Neanderthals were wiped out by a combination of factors, including climate change, competition with Homo sapiens, and assimilation through interbreeding. Regardless of what happened, the disappearance of the Neanderthals marked the end of an era in human history. For hundreds of thousands of years, Neanderthals had roamed the earth, adapting to changing environments and developing sophisticated tools and technologies. But in the end, they were no match for the forces of change. In Legacy in Our DNA, now that you know the basic story of the Neanderthals, let's dive a little deeper. What did they look like? What did they eat? How did they live? And what can their DNA tell us about them? First, let's talk about what we can learn from their bones. Neanderthals were short and stocky, with short arms and legs and a large chest. They had a protruding mid-face and prominent brow ridges, but no chin. They also had a large brain, bigger than ours, in fact. All of these features are adaptations to life in a cold climate. Their short limbs would have reduced their surface area, minimizing heat loss. Their large chest would have helped them expand their lungs, allowing them to take in more oxygen. And their large brain would have helped them plan ahead and adapt to changing conditions. As for what they ate, the Neanderthals were hunters and gatherers. They hunted large animals like mammoths, reindeer, and wild horses, and they gathered plants, fruits, and nuts when they could. They also ate smaller animals like rabbits, foxes, and wolves. Neanderthals were probably more dependent on meat than earlier humans, and they may have hunted big game in groups. They probably butchered their prey using stone tools, and they probably cooked their food over a fire. When it comes to how they lived, the Neanderthals probably lived in small groups of related individuals. They probably moved from place to place following the herds of animals they hunted. They probably built temporary shelters out of wood and stone. And they probably wore clothing made of animal skins. They probably used spears and other weapons made of bone and stone to hunt and defend themselves. And they probably buried their dead. Finally, let's talk about what we can learn from their DNA. Neanderthals and Neand. Homo sapiens interbred around 500 times over a period of thousands of years. This means that some Neanderthal genes are present in all non-African humans today. By studying this DNA, scientists have learned that Neanderthals were more closely related to Homo sapiens than previously thought. They also learned that Neanderthals experienced a population bottleneck around 70,000 years ago. This event, which reduced their numbers to just a few thousand individuals, may have made them more vulnerable to extinction. Rewriting the story. In recent years, new archaeological discoveries have rewritten the story of the Neanderthals. Once thought to be a brutish, primitive species, we now know that they were more like us than we ever imagined. From their sophisticated tools and weapons to their beautiful art and jewelry, the Neanderthals were a complex and highly intelligent species. They were also deeply emotional beings who grieved when they lost a loved one. They may have even had a belief in an afterlife. So what do you think? You think the Neanderthals got a bad rap? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And for more prehistoric documentaries, be sure to subscribe and stay tuned for more updates. Thanks for watching.